He seemed normal, polite, quiet. But behind those calm eyes lived one of the most horrifying killers in American history. Tonight, we delve into the dark story of the man they called the Milwaukee Cannibal, Jeffrey Dahmer. Between 1978 and 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer murdered 17 young men and boys. His crimes were not just acts of violence. They were driven by a chilling obsession to possess and control. What police would eventually discover inside his small Milwaukee apartment would send shockwaves across the globe, revealing a depth of depravity that few could comprehend. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born in 1960 in Ohio. To his parents and neighbors, he was a shy, withdrawn child. But beneath that quiet exterior, a dark fascination was taking root. He developed an early obsession with death, collecting roadkill and dissecting the animals he found. He wanted to understand what was inside, to study their bones, to peel back the layers of life itself. It was a macabre hobby that started with animals, but it was a terrifying omen of what was to come. As he entered high school, Dahmer's isolation grew. He felt like an outsider, disconnected from his peers, and turned to alcohol to numb his inner turmoil. By his late teens, he was already an alcoholic, using it as a crutch to navigate a world he felt he didn't belong in. Then, at just 18 years old, in the chaotic aftermath of his parents' messy divorce, that inner darkness finally broke free. He committed his first murder. His victim was a young hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. Dahmer invited him back to his family's home for a few drinks. When Hicks wanted to leave, a wave of panic and a desperate fear of abandonment washed over Dahmer. He couldn't let him go. He strangled Hicks, and in the days that followed, he dismembered the body and buried the remains in the woods behind his house. And then, silence. No one knew. For nearly a decade, the secret stayed buried, a dark seed planted deep within him. For 9 long years, Dahmer managed to suppress his urges. He served in the army, held down jobs, and tried to live a normal life. But the darkness never truly left him. In 1987, after moving to Milwaukee, it returned with a vengeance. He killed again. This time, however, something had shifted. He didn't just dispose of the body, he kept it. He began taking photographs, documenting his gruesome acts. His obsession was growing, twisting into a need to not just kill, but to preserve his victims, to keep them with him forever. Milwaukee's vibrant nightlife became his hunting ground. The bustling bars and lonely bus stops were filled with potential victims. Dahmer would lure young men back to his apartment with promises of money or drinks. Once there, he would drug them, strangle them, and then engage in horrific acts of necrophilia and dismemberment. He photographed every step of his grotesque ritual. In his twisted mind, he was creating permanent companions, people who would never judge him, never leave him. He wanted to own them, body and soul, forever. His apartment, number 213 on North 25th Street, was transforming into a personal house of horrors. What awaited inside apartment 213 was the stuff of nightmares. When investigators finally entered, they were met with an overwhelming stench of death and decay. They found a human head in the refrigerator, skulls in a closet, and severed hands and hearts in the freezer. In the corner of his bedroom stood a large blue barrel filled with acid, which he used to dissolve his victims' flesh, leaving only the skeletons he cherished. The evidence of his atrocities was everywhere. This small, unassuming apartment had become a private hell in the heart of Milwaukee. Dahmer's reign of terror ended not because of brilliant detective work, but by sheer chance. On the night of July 22, 1991, a 32-year-old man named Tracy Edwards managed to do what so many others could not. He escaped. After being lured to the apartment and handcuffed, Edwards fought back and fled into the street, flagging down a police car. He led the officers back to Dahmer's apartment. When they stepped inside and discovered the gruesome Polaroid photos and human remains, the full, horrifying picture became clear. The Milwaukee Cannibal was caught. During his interrogation, Dahmer was unnervingly calm and cooperative. Without a trace of emotion, he confessed to everything. He detailed 17 murders, recounting the events with a chilling, matter-of-fact tone. When asked why, his explanation was simple and terrifying. "I didn't want them to leave. I created these needs in me. I wanted to keep them with me, forever." It wasn't about hate. It was about a desperate, pathological loneliness that had curdled into an insatiable evil. In 1992, Jeffrey Dahmer stood trial. Despite an insanity defense, the jury found him sane and guilty. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, a sentence totaling more than 900 years. He would spend the rest of his days behind bars, locked away from the world he had terrorized. But the walls of a prison couldn't protect him from the same kind of violence he had inflicted on others. On November 28, 1994, just 2 years into his sentence, Dahmer was attacked and beaten to death by a fellow inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institution. The man who had taken so many lives met his own violent end. For some, it was a form of justice served behind bars. His story, which began with a quiet boy's fascination with death, ended just as it had lived, in brutality and bloodshed. The case of Jeffrey Dahmer left an indelible scar on the American psyche. It forced law enforcement and the public to confront an uncomfortable truth, that true monsters do not always lurk in the shadows or fit a stereotypical profile. Sometimes they are the quiet neighbor, the polite coworker, the person you'd least expect. This was the story of the Milwaukee Cannibal, Jeffrey Dahmer, a man who showed the world that evil can wear the most ordinary of faces. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary insightful, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the dark truths of history. Stay curious and stay safe.